What is up, guys? I hope you had a little caw at the intro. Today, we're going to be looking at the Falconer, a rogue sub-mastery class of Last Epoch. So this is a new ARPG that's going to be launching on Steam in its 1.0 finished version on February the 21st, 2024. That means we're only a little over 10 days away from game launch as of this recording. I'm going to be breaking down this subclass completely, going over all the skills, what I think optimal builds will probably be when the 1.0 actually drops in a little over 10 days. And I'm going to be guiding you through everything and my entire thoughts on the new Falconer subclass, which looks amazing. If you like to rain death from above, if you like to have like a sword and archery playstyle while moving very, very fast and having a lot of mobility, I think this sub-mastery of the rogue is going to be incredible. And now let's get into it without any further ado. So starting with our passive, we're going to be looking at Falconry. Now, Falconry is a passive that allows you to summon in a untargetable minion. So you do not need to worry about the health of your Falcon. It is invulnerable. It is very important to note that this has both a scaling tag of minion and dexterity. That means that specifically any items that scale on minion damage or dexterity is going to increase the damage of your Falcon. Now, as you're seeing on screen, this Falcon will basically follow you around. You can actually issue attack commands, and it will basically do a damage by striking the enemies in a small AoE around where the Falcon flies. This is really basically the heart and soul of the build, and by empowering your Falcon and basically getting it to attack your enemies for you, you are going to see how strong and amazing this sub-mastery of Rogue really is. So if you are like me, you absolutely hate to be flat-footed, and with the Falconer, you never will be, because I think it's going to have one of the strongest skills for mobility in Last Epoch, which is aerial assault. Now, what aerial assault allows you to do is basically jump into the air, your Falcon will pick you up, and then you will land on the ground, and the Falcon will do what's called Wing Burst. Wing Burst is like an AoE cloud of daggers that comes down. This is going to be fantastic for clearing campaign content. If you are playing Last Epoch for your first run and you just want to clear the campaign quickly and get to the end game as quickly as you can, which is, I think, going to be the goal for a lot of people, this is going to be an amazing skill. And honestly, the traversal and just the mobility that the Falconer has is going to be really second to none. I think this skill is going to be absolutely amazing, and I'm so excited for it. So next up, we have one of my favorite skills on the Falconer, which is Dive Bomb. What Dive Bomb will allow you to do is basically get your Falcon to soar downwards and crash into the enemy, doing a huge AoE cone damage. And in my opinion, this is going to be one of the first skills that you should specialize in if you are in the mastery of Falconer. I think this is going to be one of your primary burst abilities, and I really love this. I think the visuals look really cool, and I expect this to be able to deal absolutely insane damage, very similar to like a spellcaster dropping Meteor. This is going to do an incredible amount of physical and minion-based damage, and yeah, it just looks absolutely awesome. This is going to be one of the first skills that I will specialize in when I play a Falconer. We are going to go on to one of the utility skills that the Falconer has, which is Explosive Trap. Now, these are fire traps that you can throw on the ground. They take 0.4 seconds to arm, and for the next 30 seconds, any enemies that walk over them will get fire damage applied to them. So I think this is going to be a really strong zoning and utility skill. When, let's say, your other skills are down, or when you want to kite away from enemies, you can basically kite away, throw these explosive traps on the ground, and have your enemies basically run into them. And I also think this is very thematic with the build and with the Falconer having that kind of hit and run playstyle. So I really do like this skill. I don't think this will be one that you specialize in early, but you could do a build primarily around fire damage and explosive traps, which could be a really unique Falconer sub-archetype. The final skill that the Falconer has access to is the self-peeled skill Net. Now, what this will allow you to do is jump backwards and basically self-peel away from enemies. Bosses and rare enemies will be slowed by around 35%, while any other enemies will be completely immobilized for 3 to 5 seconds. This is going to be really important because, as we've talked about, a lot of times in the Falconer, you are going to be doing a run and gun type playstyle. You are going to be using your Falcon to actually deal damage, and so you will want to peel away from enemies and that is exactly what Net will be doing for you. I do think this is a skill that you will be specializing in fairly early, because I think it's going to be extremely important for this playstyle to work correctly and basically have that strong self-peel where you can get away from enemies and continue to deal damage and hop in and out of the battle. Alright guys, so we've looked at the Falconer skills. Now let's actually get a deep dive into the passive tree, and I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on each of the passives, starting from the left and proceeding to the right. So let's start out with Wilderness Scout. This is pretty simple. It's giving you additional health and additional dodge rating. I think this is pretty much a must take, and I think almost everybody's going to be taking this, because if you're playing a rogue, you will be on pretty low health. So Wilderness Scout is going to be very useful. This is going to go directly into Outlander's Tenacity. You have additional dodge rating, and you gain a portion of your maximum health as endurance threshold if you have not been hit recently. I think people will be getting some points into this, but I definitely don't think this is going to be the best passive skill on the skill tree, in my opinion, and I would maybe take only 2 to 3 points into this. Now we're going to be going into Stamina of the Rover. This is increased dodge rating and increased mana regen. You are going to be casting quite a few spells on this particular mastery, so I think Stamina of the Rover is going to be pretty essential. And yeah, it has a very low cooldown, so I think Stamina of the Rover is going to be fairly essential, and I'll be probably taking 5 out of 5 or 6 out of 6 into this. I believe it's a 6 there, so 6 out of 6. Next up, we're going into Raptor's Wings. You have a chance to gain haste for 2 seconds when you or your Falcon hits an enemy. This is a no-brainer, guys. It's going to be one of the best early passives that you can get for the Falconer. You're definitely going to be hitting enemies a lot, so to gain haste every time you hit an enemy, it's incredible. Additionally, you deal more damage, multiplicative with other modifiers when you have haste. This is incredibly good, and I think if you don't max out this passive, you're absolutely crazy. It's going to be amazing. Raptor's Wings is really good. Let's look at the bottom here on the left-hand side, which is Handler. Increased minion damage 56%. Your Falcon and Ballistas have increased base crit chance. Now, remember that since your Falcon is being treated as a minion, and you're going to be itemizing with probably gear that increases minion damage, I think Handler is a no-brainer. I believe this has 8 points total you can put into it. I think this is going to be very good to dump your points into, and I think it's going to be fairly essential. Next up, we're going to be going to Crimson Skies. You have a chance to gain a stack of Crimson Shroud when you or your Falcon or Ballista hit an enemy. Now, I think this is going to be pretty important. I'm not sure people are going to be maxing this out. I think it depends on your build, but this is a pretty useful skill. Next up, we're going to be going to Agile Hunt, Dexterity +8. So your Falcon deals additional throwing damage per point of your dexterity. We know this whole particular build, and generally the rogue in general, is going to be scaling off dexterity. We're going to be getting gear that is primarily dexterity. We know that most of your skills scale off of dexterity and minion. So Agile Hunt just makes total sense. I think maxing this skill out is going to be essential. And yeah, for the passive tree, Agile Hunt is just really good. Next up, we're going to be going to Expert Duelist. Increase melee damage with a two-handed weapon. Now, honestly, I think this depends on your archetype, but this may be one of those that a lot of people do not take very many points into. The reason being, I think a lot of times you're going to be using a bow with this build, or you're going to be using a very one-handed build and kind of attacking and then getting immediately out. I don't think you're going to be using a two-handed weapon very often with this build, even though that would be a really interesting sub build to actually run. So I feel like Expert Duelist may be one of the least valuable skills in this particular Falconer passive tree. Next up, we're going to have the Peltast. Increase throwing attack damage, increase throwing attack speed. This is going to be, I think, moderately useful. I think this really depends on what build you're doing and what you're actually doing with the Falconer. I have a feeling that this isn't going to be as good as it sounds. I do think the Falcon, actually throwing the Falcon, counts like the minion counts as throwing damage. But realistically, I just don't think that this is going to be the best allocation of your passive points, in my particular opinion, even though it's not terrible. Next up, Ranger's Mark. You deal increased damage while wielding a bow, and your bow hits have a chance to gain your Falcon additional melee damage for 4 seconds. This has no stack limit. you are going to be maxing this out 7 out of 7 Rangers mark. I think it's going to be incredible. Maybe one of the most important passive points that you can have for the Falconer. I think this is just incredibly good because I do think you're going to be using the bow at almost all times. So I think this is going to be very, very useful. Now we are going to be going to Fencing Grace. Increased damage with your one-handed weapon, 42%. So this is kind of a companion skill to Expert Duelist. So if you're using two-handed weapons, you use Expert Duelist. If you're using one-handed weapons, you use Fencing Grace. I think Fencing Grace is probably going to be much more useful for the majority of people because they're going to either be using bows or one-handed weapons. So I think Fencing Grace is probably just much, much better. Next up, we're going to have the Avian Hull. Your Falcon gains a portion of your added throwing damage as added melee and throwing damage. So if you're going into that throwing build and throwing becomes really important, then this Avian Hull makes a lot of sense. So we can kind of see that with a lot of these, like Peltast, and then Peltast is going directly into Avian Hull. So it makes sense, and if you're going for that throwing-based build, I think that could be really valuable. Sharpest Point, you deal increased damage and have an additional chance to bleed when wielding a spear. Now, interestingly enough, I think this build is going to synergize with bleed builds very, very well. I think there's a lot of utility there that bleed builds could be very good. So if you do have a spear, Sharpest Point would make absolutely a lot of sense to have. So I think this could be quite good and is very, very interesting. Now we're going to Tactician. Melee damage for Falcon plus 18, throwing damage for Falcon plus 18, bow damage for Ballista plus 18. This is all stuff that you're going to want. In my opinion, I think the majority of people when they're starting out with the Falconer are probably going to be running a bow build, and melee damage and throwing damage for your Falcon is also useful. So Tactician is just a very good passive skill to have no matter what build you're doing. We're going to go now to Blast Radius. So this is going to be really, really important if you are using more of the mines. If you are using more of the explosive traps, then I think Blast Radius is going to be really important. I think this is going to be really fun in terms of leveling. I think I could see this being very, very valuable. So I think it is very good to get Blast Radius and get it as early as you can. Deflect and Weave. You have additional block and a chance to receive a glancing blow. Additionally, you regain health whenever you block or receive a glancing blow. Deflect and Weave is just overall good, guys. You're going to want to have as much block chance as you possibly can to try to minimize the damage you're taking. So I think Deflect and Weave just on the surface is an extremely valuable passive point. Final Souvenir. You have an additional dodge rating and you now have a chance to drop caltrops on you when you dodge and there's an enemy within 4 meters of you. If you're using anything like with an explosive trap build, I think this is going to be very valuable. Otherwise, I'm not sure how much you would be using Final Souvenir. So I think this really depends on what type of sub build you are doing with the Falconer. Personally, I do intend to use explosive traps, and so I think Final Souvenir is going to be very useful to me, and I would recommend getting it. Lego's Stratagem, increasing throwing damage. We've already talked about this. This is very similar to Avian Hull and Peltast. So, you know, if you're doing a throwing-based build, this is going to be very good. Coordinated Fate. When you use a certain ability on your bar, you gain 3 sacks of Silver Shroud. This effect has a 10-second cooldown. The problem about this, guys, is that this 10-second cooldown makes me think this won't be as good as you think it would be. It does give you a little bit of health. But yeah, I kind of feel like this might be one of the weaker skills in this particular passive tree, and I probably won't be getting Coordinated Fate too early. Evasive Tactics, Dexterity up, increased armor, and increased dodge rating. This is all things you want. You want more dexterity, you need more armor, and dodge rating is extremely useful. So I would recommend getting 6 out of 6 in Evasive Tactics. We are now going on to Similian Feathers. You have an additional armor per point of dexterity. This is incredibly useful, guys, because you're going to be getting a lot of dexterity. Therefore, it's making that into armor. So Similian Feathers, I think, is just extremely good. You have increased armor for each time your Falcon has hit an enemy recently. Again, incredibly useful. Definitely get this and max this passive point out. Sky Assassin, increased damage over time. Now, this is interesting. I think it depends on the subtype of build you're running. This may be if you have some sort of dot effect or you have some form of like necrotic damage. I could kind of see this being useful. Sky Assassin may not be useful in a lot of builds, but it is very interesting, and I think I am very interested with this passive point because I think there's a lot of really cool things you could do with it. Needle-like precision, increase crit chance, increase minion crit chance, critical multiplier, and increase minion critical multiplier. Absolutely get this. I think almost all builds are going to be maxing this one out. I mean, increasing crit chance in this game is just incredibly, incredibly strong. Increasing minion critical multiplier. I mean, basically everything that this gives you is everything that you want. So I think this is going to be a very useful passive point. Poise, glancing blow chance plus 10%. I'm not sure, since it's only giving you glancing blow chance, I'm not really sure how useful Poise is. And being fairly late in the skill tree over here on the right-hand side, I think there's probably other things that you could get that are better. Expediency, haste on you has increased effect, and you gain haste for a short duration whenever you use a potion. You're going to be using potions as you're going towards the later part of the game. I think Expediency is going to be really, really strong. It gives you 20% extra haste effect and duration. So yeah, I think this is going to be really good. I think Expediency you should always max out, and it's going to be incredibly useful. Next up, we have one on the very far right-hand side, so some of the final passive skill points that you would be getting, which is Strike the Flank, increase damage 46%, increase slow 60%. So this is interesting because you can now start to put slow into the mix, but again, just increasing base damage is incredibly good. I do think this is a very, very useful passive skill. Finesse them. You regain health when you or your minion crits an enemy. I think this is going to be incredibly good because we've seen things that actually increase crit, like needle-like precision. So finesse them is just very synergetic with that. And yeah, health gain on crit and crit avoidance plus 45%. Your minions gain additional critical strike multiplier per 2% of your uncapped critical strike avoidance. This is going to be an absolutely great skill, and I think it's going to be one of the best ones in the Falconer's passive tree. And then we finally have Tailwind. You take less damage when moving. Additionally, you have an increased movement speed and dodge rating. These effects are doubled if your Falcon has hit an enemy recently. Guys, you're going to be moving constantly with this build. This is a very, very hit and run based playstyle. So I think Tailwind is going to be incredibly useful, and I love this skill. I think this is very unique, and I think it really thematically fits with what the Falconer is trying to do. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that Falconer passive tree, and I would love to hear down in the comments what you feel the best passive points are going to be, or the type of build that you would be building with the Falconer. So here we are, guys, at the end of the guide. I really hope this was helpful. I tried to make this the most in-depth, comprehensive Falconry mastery guide on YouTube before the 1.0 launch. I'm going to be doing a lot more game coverage, and I just want you guys to know there are 3 editions of this game: the standard edition for $34.99, the deluxe edition for $49.99, and the all-inclusive ultimate edition for $64.99. Now you can get this either on Steam, or you can click in the video description below, go to the Nexus GG link that I have. That helps support me as a content creator, as well as the game developers in an officially recognized storefront. I really, really hope you guys get into this game. I'm going to be doing so much content, and I really think, especially for $34.99, this game is so worth your time and money. So I really hope this guide was helpful to you. Please leave me comments below about what you think, how you're going to be building your Falcon Mastery Rogue, and I really, really am excited to see you in game on February 21st, 2024. I will see you in the next video, guys.